I'm Bob Totten. I'm the Shawnee County Historical Society's Executive Director, and that's who's putting this on today. We're having Rick Peterson, who's going to be talking about sports in Shawnee County. I've got a big, long interaction back information about him, but he's been spending 40 years in the sports writing business, and he does know what he's going to be talking about. I want to remind you, this is the third seminar that we've had this fall. We're going to have another one next week and through Thanksgiving. We appreciate you all joining us at the right time. If you're a member of the Shawnee County Historical Society and you haven't renewed your membership, I'd love to have your money. Send me a check for $35 for one person or $50 to Box 2201, Topeka. And if you aren't a member, we'd sure like to have that too at the appointed time. We'd love to have you as a member. I'm now at the point in time to introduce Rick Peterson. Rick Peterson was born and raised in Kansas City, Kansas, graduate of Wyandotte High School and Southwestern College. He's been a sports writer, as I said, for 40 years, working in the Baldwin and Ottawa area before he moved to Topeka and worked for the Capital Journal. He's got a lot to talk about. I hope you're interested. Save your questions till the appropriate time at the end. And I'll turn it over to you, Rick. Thank you again for joining us. We appreciate it.
Well, I certainly appreciate the chance to be here today. I was actually started out in college at Southwestern College in Winfield as a history and political science major. And what I found out was the history and poli-sci courses were real early in the morning. And I was more of a night owl than I was a morning guy. So eventually I decided I could either stay in that line of work or I could go and watch games for a living. And that was pretty easy choice for me. So my first job was 2 weeks after I graduated from college, and I've been in the business ever since. I was 40 and a half years in the newspaper business. And as I was telling Bob earlier, I still absolutely bleed ink. I mean, I love the newspaper business, but I think we can all agree that the newspaper business has changed dramatically over those 4 decades that I've been involved. Fortunately, I had the opportunity a lot of the guys in my business didn't get. I got to retire on my old terms, and I did that December 1st of last year. But I wasn't ready to quit covering sports. So a month later, we with some of my buddies that I known forever in the media business, we decided to launch topsports.news, and we launched that on January 1st. I'm basically doing the same exact thing I did forever. It's just a little different form. Like I said, I'm still a newspaper guy. I get the newspaper delivered still every morning in my driveway, but this is something that's working out well for us. And I'm glad to be able to continue doing what I love. I've had the opportunity in my career to cover. I covered KU and when they won their last national basketball championship in San Antonio. I've covered bowl games, and yes, KU bowl game in Hawaii. I covered K-State bowl game in San Diego. I covered the Tommy Morris and George Foreman heavyweight championship fight in Las Vegas. I've had the opportunity to just cover a lot of great things, but my favorite has always been covering high school sports, and all high school sports. I love football and basketball, but I also love bowling and cross country and tennis and all of those sports. And I try to treat, you can't always treat them equal, but I try to treat them equal because I know there's as many people out there that it's very important to them for all those different sports. So this is what we've tried to do, And I'm also a big fan of Washburn University athletics. I think they have great programs. I think, and Bob Henson, who was my mentor, one of my mentors, and an absolute legend, sports writing and legend in Kansas. If he told me once, he told me 100 times. He said, as long as it says Topeka on the top of the masthead, you got to take care of Topeka. And that's always been my focus, and will continue to be my focus as long as I'm able to do that. There's several things that we could talk about, and after I'm done, I'm hoping that you'll have a whole list of questions for me. I'll be glad to try to answer all of them. I can talk about what I feel is the future of the newspaper business, the future of journalism, why certain things may get more coverage than others. I'll be glad to try to answer anything. And but I wanted to talk today about, I think it's very important, and this is, like I said, this is what I strive to do. I think it's very important that we remember not only the present players and people that are taking part in athletics today, but those are those greats from the past. I mean, I was one of the instigators, if you will, when we did our top 100 project at the Capitol Journal in 2011, and that to this day is one of the most satisfying projects I've been a part of. I thought it was important to redo it in 2020. I could kind of see the handwriting on the wall that I was going to leave in the paper, so we did a top 125 redo, if you will, and it did that in 20. And then as soon as I went to topsports.news, we started talking about the one thing that the top 100 and the top 125 project was unable to do was some of the sports didn't get as much mention just because there were, so many great football, basketball, baseball players in the county. So I wanted to do something to kind of recognize all the sports. So this summer, starting in July and through August, I put together top 25 lists for every single sport that the Kansas State High School Activities Association offers that our Shawnee County schools take part in. And that was something that it was a challenge. It was, when we started the 2011 project, we had probably 10 people that had a hand in doing that. When we did the one in 20, Brent Maycock and I were about the only ones that left, and we did that with a lot of trying to get a lot of outside influence. And then this year, it was basically me, and it was a challenge. But I also thought it was very important to let the public be involved. So we let the public vote for the people they thought, and then I had the final say with a group of media people that I trusted and been worked with for several years in putting the list together. What I've realized through all these projects, these top 100, top 25, top 125, is I think Topeka and Shawnee County as a whole sometimes gets overlooked for the greatness that the great athletes that they've put on the map over the years and over the decades. Also coaches, and I'm hoping if I can figure out a way to do it next summer, I would like to do a list of the greatest coaches of all time in Shawnee County. But just to start with, just thinking, I'm sure even if you're not a big sports fan, I think you would know these names. But I mean, just Margaret Murdoch, tied for a gold medal in the Olympics in shooting, got the silver. Preston Carrington was the Olympian. Melvin Douglas was a multi-time Olympian in wrestling. Mike Torres I will always say should have been the MVP of the World Series when he helped the Yankees win the World Series. Ken Berry, a great career in Major League Baseball. A little more contemporary, Gary Woodland, Shawnee Heights, Washburn, KU, 2019 U.S. Open champion, one of the most loyal guys to his hometown that I know. And it goes on. But then we also have, Chris Barnes, the Hall of Fame bowler. Um, great athletes, and Chris Barnes still active. Gary Woodland's still active, and then more, you know, more contemporary. Kai Thomas who was a legend at Topeka High just a couple years back. He's having a great season at Minnesota. He started out just trying to get on the field, and they had some injuries, and he's really stepped up and done a great job. Kyle Weems was the Missouri Valley undefeated high school team at Highland Park, Missouri Valley Player of the Year at Missouri State, and now playing in his 10th year of professional basketball overseas. Just a great athlete. Michael Wilhoy uh, came to Highland Park for 1 year, but if you ask him where he's from, he'll say Highland Park, and he's very proud of it. Played at Washburn, played 6 years in the NFL, played in the Super Bowl. Other Topekans that did that were Tom Dinkle and Troy Wilson. Michael Wilhoit's now the linebackers coach for the San Diego Chargers. I just think that sometimes we forget the greatness that this city and this county have produced, and I thought it was very important to continue to do that, and I think we'll continue to do that. I see my good friend Vince Fry back there. Vince and I have worked forever, it seems like, on the Topeka Shawnee County. It was Sports Council, now just the Topeka Shawnee County Sports Awards and Hall of Fame. I think Vince would agree. That's been very satisfying to be able to bring in some of these athletes and put them in the Hall of Fame. And to a person, they really appreciate it. And when I call people for interviews like the Tom Dinkles and Melvin Douglas, they're always so proud of where they came from and always talk in glowing terms about Topeka. I'm not sure I mentioned, can't forget Silver Lake. Lon Kruger is, everybody knows him, maybe as a coach these days, but he was a great multi-sport athlete that had a chance to go pro in basketball, baseball, and even got a look with the Cowboys, invited to the Cowboys tryout camp. Even if you don't worship sports like a lot of us do, you still, I think, recognize that all these people that go on and do great things out of this county, they're a good reflection on Topeka and where they grew up, and our schools and things like that. Going back to the top 25 project I did this summer, I think you'll realize a lot of these names, and I'm very proud of this list because I think it does speak highly for the city and the county. But Chris Barnes was number one on my list for bowling. Lonnie Kruger, number one on my list for men's basketball. Women's basketball was a Shawnee Heights and Washburn legend, Brenda Schaefer-Dahl. Torres was number one on all my lists for baseball, and he was number one in 2011 overall, and he was number two behind Woodland in 2020. Ken Berry was number two in in 2011 and always joked and probably still jokes that he wanted to see Torres' green card. But he, those are just great people to represent our town. Kaylee Mike Mann's daughter, is still playing professional volleyball after being a multi-sport athlete at Washburn Rural and a All-American at Iowa State. I mentioned Tom Dinkle. Therese Nicolay will go down in history as one of the top distance runners in state history. Ran at Shawnee Heights and then Missouri. Lisa Carey was an NCAA softball champion and hit the game-winning home run for Oklahoma to win the title. We talked about Preston Carrington and Melvin Douglas. Melvin Douglas, 3-time high school state champ, 2-time NCAA champ, 2-time Olympian, and a multi-time U.S. champion and a world champion in wrestling. Margaret Murdoch was regarded as one of the greatest shooters of all time, and is still in the community, I believe. Glenn Trammell was a swimming legend. I remember hearing about long before I got here. Sherry Norris played on the professional tennis circuits and said she always got a lump in her throat when they introduced her as being from Topeka, Kansas. Go on and on and on, but they were all great representatives of this town. And that's the one thing I hate, that we just sometimes forget. It's easy to forget these people, and I think that would be a terrible injustice. I remember at the paper many years ago, back when we had a full staff, we had a couple of young guys, and I was talking about Torres and Barry and some of those, and they looked at me and there was crickets. They had no idea who any of these guys were. And I took that personally, and I said, hey, if you're going to be in Topeka, if you're going to be in Shawnee County, you need to go Google them, and you're going to need to find out who these people are, because they're very important to Topeka, and Topeka is very important to them. Like Bob said earlier, I've kind of transitioned, and I'm with topsports.news now. It will be, as long as I can do it, a major priority to continue to give these people, good attention and good publicity. The great thing I love about our website is that it's completely free. We don't charge a cent, so anybody can get on and get on their phone, get on their laptop, get on their desktop, and see our work. And I'm easy to reach. If you ever have a great story idea or anything like that, I'm more than happy to answer you. I'll always answer you, and we'll see what we can do. But I've been very blessed in my life to still be doing what I'm doing decades later, and I'm just happy. I hope, God willing, I'll do it for a few more years. But I would love to hear any comments you guys have. Any athletes you think have been missed over the years. Like I said, I would be glad to address the future, what I feel the future of journalism and newspapers are. Hit me. I'm ready.
Okay, folks, you're going to have to open up your microphones if you have any questions. I will start off with a couple. Dale Cushenberry, and I think there was a man by the name of Slaughter that played for Topeka High in the early 60s. I don't remember his background. How do you judge? I mean, you put in people who are more frequent. We know about those, but there are some historical people that I honestly don't know that were sports legends besides Mike Torres and Carrington and so forth. Help me out.
Okay.
With that, if you would.
I'll be glad to. Vince and I, hey, we can take this question. Both Fred Slaughter and Dale Cushenberry are in the Topeka Shawnee County Hall of Fame. Both of them have also been on all the lists we talk about. Fred Slaughter, A lot of people don't know he was a state high jump champion, but he was a starter after Topeka High. He was a starter on John Wooden's first national championship team at UCLA, and later became a lawyer. And he came back. He's passed away now, but he came back several years ago and was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Dale Cushenberry deserves to be on everything, and not just for his athletics, but for what he did as an administrator, high school principal, and things like that. And we saw him in June. He was at our this year's banquet. He's doing great. He's a Hall of Famer in Emporia State, and was a great basketball player at Emporia State. And those are the type of see, that list is endless. I mean, guys that just really made their mark here. And we sit down usually early in the spring, and try to sit down and decide who we need to get into the Hall of Fame. And our criteria for the Hall of Fame is a lot the same as my criteria for some of these lists we talk about, in that what they did in high school, what they did in college, what they did in professionally, if they had the opportunity to go professionally. And then we look at all that. We also try to get people in while they're still around to enjoy it, because that's something they can really share with their families and friends. And then what I look at too, a lot I look at, and it sometimes can be the real tiebreaker, is how much team success they had. Because any great athlete will tell you that it was all about the team. And there are some very individual sports, but everybody I talk to always talks about the team and their team accomplishments and their team camaraderie and things like that. So I always look at people that have had a lot of team success as well.
Okay, does anybody else have questions?
This is Vince Fry. Rick might want to talk about the fact that there is a Topeka and Shawnee County Sports Hall of Fame, and it is located at the Topeka and Shawnee County Library. It has been there for many years. It's in the sports book section, of course, and you can see the current inductees pictures. We do a portrait every year, but there's a monitor that has digitized all of the inductees going back to the first year, which is 2006. So if you are at the library, you might take a look and see. But we start, like he said, in the spring, looking at a long list that we have, and it continues to be added to, and determine who needs to be invited into the Hall of Fame. And I will say that of all the people that we've inducted, they've all attended, unless they had passed on, except Billie Jean Moore, who was the women's Olympic basketball coach that won the silver medal many years ago, and she wasn't able to be here. But every one of these have been excited to come back and receive the award in front of a large crowd. We always get 300 or more every year at the induction.
Question from Tim Rencher was, in the decades you've covered high school sports here, do you think that the interest has gone up, gone down, or has it kind of stayed the same?
That's a very good question that I'm not surprised that Tim Rencher would think of. He's been around a long time. I'd say the crowds may not be as big as they once were. There were times you'd go to the dungeon, for example, at Topeka High. You couldn't get in. I mean, that huge facility would just be packed. You know, they always talked about the fire marshals were looking at them. I think the crowds may be down because of the fact that now you can get it. You know, a lot of times you might be able to live stream it. You know, there in this town, we're fortunate enough to have 2 radio stations that are always doing games. You know, they can see the scores on Twitter, on the internet. So I think some people, particularly if it's a cold night or something like that, will just stay home. So the crowds may be down. I think the interest is up. I really think the interest is up. I think more people pay attention now to it than ever, because just look at the sports we've added fairly recently. Girls wrestling. Girls wrestling is a huge. I mean, Washburn Rural gets over 100 girls that report for that first meeting for girls wrestling. They're the two-time state champion in the only 2 years they've had girls wrestling. Go back to bowling, when they added high school bowling boys and girls. I think, there's obviously, you're adding more sports, so you're adding more parents, you're adding more grandparents, you're adding more student athletes. And I just think there's more interest now than ever before. I like where high school sports are headed. I think that the Keisha does a good job of studying. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't have boys volleyball at some point soon. I just think I think we try to when a new sport crops up that's getting a lot of nationwide attention, I think Keisha does look at it. And I'm not sure we're done with the number of sports we have now. I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 22 now, and I could see that number growing a little bit. But so I think the future of high school athletics, I think, is great. They've had to go through some problems or challenges, Keisha always calls them, because a lot of your, AAU type stuff and the club stuff and things like that, some of those have discouraged people from, one, playing high school sports at all because they think they need to play clubs level stuff, but two, from being multi-sport athletes. And I couldn't be more against that. The people I talked to, Danny McHenry, some of the great multi-sport athletes, Nigeria Kennedy right now is one of the state's best in both basketball and softball. They all talk about how much being multi-sport athletes helps them. So I hope we never get away from that. And I hope that people never get away from not only playing high school sports, just because of the simple relationships you build, not only with your fellow athletes, but with the coaches. I mean, I know some people, a lot of people over the years, consider their high school coach to be a second father or second mother. And you can't overlook at that. That's just, in my mind, that's just super important.
Rick, on that deal about coaches, Bob Keeshan was wondering, are there any high school coaches in the Hall of Fame? And maybe you might talk about that. Would C.J. Hamilton be one of those, or?
Yeah, definitely. And Vince, if you're still out there, make sure I don't miss anybody. But Willie Nickland was one of the first coaches to go in our Hall of Fame, and the legend at I used to always call him Wilford because that was his real name, and it kind of pissed him off, but I think he enjoyed it. But Willie Nickland, C.J. Hamilton, who's been going through a very big health scare, and I'm very happy we got him in. Ken Darting is in. Ken Darting we put in after he retired, but SOB turned around and came back and is coaching at Shawnee Heights now.
Randy Springs?
I'm sorry, who'd you say?
Randy Springs by chance?
Randy Springs is not in yet, but it definitely is a candidate that we talk about. But one I definitely forgot, and we just put him in 2 years ago, was Ron Bowen, the legendary football coach at Washburn Rural. So yeah, we talk about coaches all the time, and I think it's very important for coaches to be in there. Let's face it, coaches make about a dime an hour, if that, for all the hours they put in coaching. So they need to be rewarded and recognized.
Rick, if I can add a couple more, we have
Yes, please do.
Joe Strog, Topeka
Joe,
West.
oh, wait a minute. See, hey, this is what happens, Vince, when you get old. The two guys I'm going to mention right now, I actually introduced for induction into the Hall of Fame, Joe Strog and Ben Meske.
Okay, how about Ken Butel?
Ken Butel. Unfortunately, we had to induct him posthumously, but yeah, Giselle spoke for him. And anybody else, Vince? See, that's why I'm counting on you.
Well, I think that's pretty much. We also had, Bob Shipman, of course, from Washburn, but Gerald Christensen.
Yes. Longtime youth track coach. And some of these track athletes I've talked about, they got their start with Gerald, with Chris. And then, of course, we talked about Billie Jean Moore, who was a softball legend in town, but then went on to become one of the most recognizable names in women's basketball.
Dean Smith is also in the Hall of Fame too.
Yes.
Don't forget Dean as a coach.
Yeah, we were unable to. His health had turned, and he was unable to come back for the banquet. But Topeka High, KU, grew up in Emporia before he came to Topeka High. And then, of course, everybody knows about his achievements at North Carolina. That's quite a few, Vince.
How would you rate Rob Hayes' recent national record running 100 miles in 14 hours? I'm not familiar with that person, but that's.
I've talked to Rob about that, and I think he probably needs to have his head examined. But he was a great runner at Topeka West and a great runner at Kansas State. I can't believe he's still doing it and still has. Here, the race is one thing, but to have the dedication to do all that training to be able to do that. And I think Rob might be in his 50s now. So I give him a lot of credit, and we do kid about it, but I'm sure running has always been very important to him and the Hayes family. And obviously he still gets a lot of enjoyment out of it, or he wouldn't do it.
I had a question about Preston Carrington.
Mm-hmm.
I know he played basketball at Wichita State in the late 60s, early 70s, but what's his adult life story? Because I'm not aware of it beyond that.
His what?
Adult life story. In other words, what did he do after?
Oh, okay. Yeah. After, at high, he was a basketball and track standout. He went to JUCO, and then he was a basketball and track standout at Wichita State. And then he was in the 68, I believe. Yeah, I think it was a 68. Let's see, 68 or 72. I get him and Margaret Murdoch went to the Olympics about the same time, but he was Olympic long jumper. And I believe he finished 5th, and he was like, crazy long in the long jump. And his jump he had in the preliminaries, if they had carried that over to the finals, he would have got a silver medal, but he wasn't able to duplicate that. So I believe he was 5th, but just a great overall athlete.
What did he do as career after that? Do you know?
Oh, yes. I know the medical field. I can't remember if it was medical sales or like it seems like he might have almost been an anesthesiologist, something like that. But it was definitely in the medical field. And the last time I talked to him, I think he was in Arizona.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
I think, Don, would you open up your mic?
That was my video I opened. But years ago, 1978, the Historical Society, Shawnee County, did a book on local sports. And, they recognized guys like Waddy Shaw and Frank Griggs and Val Jeffrey, Have you ever seen that book? Or there are probably some names back there a century ago that, I don't know how far back you go, but those are names that we still remember because they were a big part of the business community. But before that, they were great athletes, and the stories of those guys and folks even older than they were are in this book. It's something you might want to look at. It might give you some ideas for some names that are maybe so far back you haven't thought of them, but
I would love to see that book. I have not seen that book, and I would love to see that book because, we went back as far as we could find in the archives of the newspaper. We went back, but you're talking about guys that were probably maybe in early stages of the Kansas State High School Activities Association. So we, based a lot of our knowledge on high school state tournaments, things like that. You're talking about people that may have been around even before that. And I would love to see that because we're always looking for names.
Well,
and
these are, I know several of us have copies, and I know they have, I think, a full set at the Topeka room at the library.
Okay.
You'd just because you've spent enough time in Topeka long enough, you'll recognize their names as business leaders and kind of people you knew of when you were starting your career, but you probably didn't know about their sports career. But it's interesting how many legendary names in the business world were legendary athletes before that. One thing kind of led to another back in those days. And,
what they say, success begets success. So I think a lot of times the success they have in athletics or anything else led to business success.
By the way, we have digitized, I say that we were part of a project with the Topeka Public Library, which digitized all of the past bulletins that we published since 1946. So you don't have to physically get to the library, but it would probably be more helpful. And of course, we have a copy of those on our in our place too.
Okay. Pomeroy, surely you have something to say.
Yeah, I asked the question about Rob Hayes.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, no, that's a great one, and still assistant principal at Topeka High.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it, and he was back at school on Monday. I've been flat in bed, but 100 hours, and then apparently it's one that he just kept running. There were no breaks. People give him water and stuff, and he had a pacer to help him towards the end. But yeah, I just can't fathom it.
Now, as a long time coach, Dwayne, wouldn't you agree that coaches make about $0.10 an hour for the time they put in?
Yeah. And you're thinking about it all the time too, around the clock.
Yeah.
Trying to,
that's true.
Think of strategy or, recruiting kids, encouraging kids, checking on their grades.
Yep, that's true. It's a 24-hour job.
So I have a question.
Okay.
Rick, I'm Patricia Weems-Gaston. I'm Kyle Weems' auntie, and I am a retired journalist, if you will. I now teach journalism at KU, so I kind of chuckled a bit when you talked about where the business is, what the business models are, and what have you. So one question I had is, where do Kansas high school athletes, past and present, rank when compared to athletes in other states?
That's a very good question. And I don't know that I have a distinct answer, but here's the thing. I think that Kansas athletes, the elite athletes, can go on or compare to those from California, New York, anywhere. Maybe there's less elite athletes than there are in some of the big metropolises, but hey, Kyle Weems could have played anywhere. Lisa Carey could have played softball anywhere. You know, they could have gone anywhere and had the opportunity to go anywhere. Sherry Norris played on the women's tennis circuit, played at Wimbledon, U.S. Open, things like that. I think the elite athletes in Shawnee County can stack up with anybody. Like I said, there just may not be as many of them as there is in bigger states.
I have a question about a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Henson was a coach at Topeka High for a while, but he did most of his winning at McPherson, which is where I grew up.
Sure
but
did.
I was curious if he, and had two sons play D1 basketball,
Mm-hmm.
and I was curious if he rates on the radar for being considered for Shawnee County Hall of Fame.
You know, maybe not in Topeka Shawnee County Hall of Fame, because like you said, all his state titles came at McPherson and things like that. But he's a guy I have great respect for. It's just right now we have so many that have won a ton of state titles in this county that he may be down the list. But I have a great deal of respect for him. He was also, a lot of people don't know, he was a great high jump coach. Mm-hmm. And coach, his boys were great track athletes as well. So especially Brian. So he is a good one. But, you know, when we're looking at coaches, and we just talked about this a little bit ago, we've got, you know, there's guys that Kevin Hedberg, for example, has a ton of state titles. Kevin Bordewick at Washburn Rural has 8 state titles over 2 sports, 7 in volleyball, 1 in basketball. I think, and that's why I'd like to do some sort of summer project on this next year. I think coaching in this county coaches in this county get overlooked sometimes for their accomplishments. CJ Hamilton's the winningest football coach in Kansas history. So I think coaches in this area are just super.
Thank you.
You bet.
Well, does anybody else have any questions? Anything about journalism? I know Rick could expound on that if he wanted to, or we'd want him to. What is your you said you've teased me. You said, what's the future you think for journalism?
Well, I think journalism will always be around. I think there will always be journalism. The day of the newspaper that we all grew up with, probably those days are gone. The deadlines have gone from, 1 a.m. in the morning where you could get every single West Coast baseball score in, to now we're early afternoon deadlines. I didn't think I would live long enough to see a day where we didn't have the paper delivered 7 days a week in our driveway. But I think, some papers like the Star and the Wichita Eagle have already cut out a day of delivery and print editions. I think that trend is probably going to continue. The trend of early deadlines is probably going to continue. So everything that the newspapers are able to get in the paper is a lot of times going to be a couple days late. But I think journalism will always be around, and I think we still, Capital Journal still has great reporters. I had the opportunity to work with a lot of great journalists and people that took journalism very, very seriously at the Capital Journal. There's less of them now, but they're really talented, and they still really want to do a good job and still really want to tell the story. And so I think journalism will always be there. I don't think we found yet what the next big thing is. I get a little disgusted with with all the stuff that's on social media and all the, even on some of the websites and things like that. So I don't know where we go, but I think journalism will always be around, and maybe more important now than ever before, to be a watchdog over some of the things that go on in our society now. There has to be somebody there to tell the story and to tell it in an accurate manner. And I think that's what journalism, the good ones anyway, have always based their careers on.
Any final comments from anybody? Well,
yeah, Bob, I
go ahead, Dwayne.
just wanted to remark, as a coach, how much all the coaches I know appreciate all the work that Rick has done and the way that he covers, minor sports like tennis and then all the big sports. But he's always been positive. Yeah. I don't remember ever seeing him write anything negative about a coach or a player. Of course, if there's a fumble or an interception, that's part of the story, but he doesn't say this quarterback blew it. And he doesn't, talk about a program that's, needs to go in a different direction or anything like that. It's always looking for the good, but again, he's as accurate as he can be too.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. And I've always tried to be positive, because I try to remember that we're dealing with 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. And we're not dealing with professionals, at least at the high school level, and really even at the college level. So I try to remember that and try to accentuate the positive.
Rick, I had a question for you. Mm-hmm. How are you trying to get younger journalists and the journalists that I'm training at KU and also other places in the States, how are you trying to get them moved into your sphere? Because we got a bunch of sports reporters here. Maybe they need to come and sit at your feet and learn a little bit.
Well, I would absolutely love that. Patricia, I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm sure glad you brought this up. We got off to a really good start with our website. And about 3 months in, my business partner, Bill Griffin, said, "Hey, you need some help. Let's get you 2-3 other reporters. So, I'm not on a full-time basis, but on a part-time basis, so we can cover more things and things like that." We put out pleas, I'll call it, on our site, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. And we had a dickens of a time getting anybody interested in writing. Now, I have about 6 people that want to take pictures. There's a lot of people that love to take pictures, but it is hard. I think there's less people, at least in the high schools here, that are writing than are doing other things. And that frustrates me and also challenges me to try to find more. I found a Washburn rural graduate that's at Washburn University now. It's doing a great job for me. I have another Washburn University student that's helping me out. And Patricia, I would love anybody, particularly if they're like from this area and have an interest in the Topeka or Shawnee County schools. I would love to talk to them, and I would love to, to this day, and I know where your background's from Kyle, but I still remember the first day I saw my byline in a newspaper. And I thought I was pretty hot stuff to see. And I don't know if kids still feel that way, but I know I do. Just to see your byline in a paper on something you wrote, hey, it still thrills me today.
Well, I tell you what, Rick, I'm going to reach out to you. I do know there's a young kid. He's in one of my classes now, and he's a sports editor. His name is Nathan Swaffer, and he's a Topeka kid. And there's probably a couple more hiding in that group of the, those kids. But I will say this though, they need to learn the best parts of this business. Something that Mr. Pomeroy said, you're not negative. You know how to cover a story. Those are the things they really need to learn. So I'm just thrilled that I jumped in on the call today. I'm going to look you up on your website. You and I are going to be in contact. I'm going to talk to Nathan on Tuesday. We're going to figure out how to get some. Because again, journalism is a trade. You learn by doing. And the only way you get better is the more stories you write, the better you get. And you said something that tickled me about seeing your byline. Well, the University Daily Kansan, we're removing the boxes on campus because we're no longer putting print into those boxes. And so I went to KU, graduated from the J school there. And so I'm just like, I'm sad today, and I'll probably be in my feelings for a few days. But being able to see that byline, you know how it is. And even now, still seeing it just kind of you. So I will be in touch with you. I will appreciate that. Up. I'm so glad we got a chance to meet, and thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Well, Rick, as we kind of say, we appreciate your time, and I appreciate the folks that did spend time with us. If there's any other questions, I don't believe there is, but I'm sure Rick would be glad to answer them. I know you go to his website, topsportsnews.com.
Topsports.news. Yeah, topsports.news.
Yeah.
And it's
email
completely
right
free.
there.
Yep. And we'd love to have you visit.
But you can sure send him an email if you want, or get a hold of him that way. Thank you again.
Yeah, you betcha. I enjoyed it.
Next week, we have Elizabeth Taylor, not the one that maybe some of you know, but Elizabeth Taylor of Topeka, who is going to be speaking on Chester Woodward and the Woodward House. And that'll be at 3 o'clock next Sunday. We have other programs as we go along this fall, but this is one of the good ones, and they've all been good. Thank you again for being with us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.